Welcome to an all-new episode of SJHL Insider. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Jeromy Corrigan, Director of Media for the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. We have a very busy episode of SJHL Insider to get to. Of course, we are about a month away from the SJHL playoffs, so the races and the standings are heating up across the board. We will dive into that. We'll also be joined by the play-by-play voice and marketing wizard for the Weyburn Red Wings, Nick Nielsen, to chat everything about the Weyburn Red Wings, because quite frankly, they're one of the hottest teams in the SJHL. They have points in 10 of their last 11, and they are surging right now in the second half of the season. So we'll catch up with Nick along with much, much more. But before we get into it, of course, we have to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors: Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGU, Direct West, Tourism Saskatchewan, SGI, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, which presents all of our coaches' conversations, and Young's Equipment. Thank you so much for your support, because once again, without your support, this show, SJHL Weekly, and a lot of other things would not be possible. So thank you so much for your support. Let's get right into it. Clark Monroe is here, our lovely co-host. Clark, how are we doing today?
Oh, fantastic, Jeromy. It's been a really interesting week across the SJ. So I can't wait to get into it.
The emphasis on the J there.
It's a lot going on.
I mean, it's only been 2 days. That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. Let's just get into it.
Let's get into it. It's going to kick off with the hat trick. Love it. Love the roar of the horn. There's been a lot of goals, Jeromy.
The roar of the horn.
The roar of the horn.
Oh, okay.
There's been a lot of goals scored in the SJHL this week, and it's only been 2 days. So let's have a look at Tuesday's game here. Games, I should say, multiple, plural.
Yes, there were multiple games.
Plural.
That's a lot of goals.
A lot of goals. I'll let you kick this one off, Jerry.
I mean, Kindersley, they led this game 5-2. Nipawin, give them a lot of credit. They clawed their way back. Alex Ochitwa had 3 goals. The pride of Prince George, BC, had a great performance, but Kindersley got the job done in overtime, winning 6-5, and then a barn burner in Weyburn. Weyburn was up 5-0 one point.
Jeez.
I think it was like 17 minutes into the first period, but Yorkton clawed their way back, but Weyburn hung on for a 7-5 win. And then the Humboldt Broncos came back from a deficit to beat the Notre Dame Hounds 5-4 in overtime. Lots of goals. And then when we move to Wednesday, a little bit more low scoring. But the Melville Millionaires with a big 3-2 overtime win over the Estevan Bruins. They came back in that one. They were trailing 2-1 late in the third period. They got the tying goal, and then they got the game winner in overtime. And then the Melfort Mustangs won their third game in a row thanks to a big 6-2 win over the Kindersley Clippers. And of course, all of our look backs when it comes to our recaps are presented by Sask Lotteries. Like you mentioned, kind of a crazy start to the week with the amount of goals we saw in the first 2 days of the week, but I think there are some results in there that definitely stand out. And let's start a little bit with on Tuesday. I think the thing that stood out with Tuesday, Clark, is the fact that you had the teams ranked 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the standings, all taking to the ice, so important points were valuable. And the Weyburn Red Wings getting a big 2 points. Nipawin, the team ahead of them, only got 1, and Notre Dame behind them only got 1. So a good night for Weyburn.
Yeah, obviously, definitely a good night. And, you know, it's funny, you texted me that night, Jared. It was 5-0 in the first period, and you're like, holy cow, look at Weyburn, 5-0.
I was surprised, yeah.
And the fact that Yorkton was able to claw their way back into that one as much as they did and put a little bit of a scare into Weyburn, I think it's a great sign. Obviously, the shots were very equal. It seemed like outside of that score early on, the game itself ended up being very close battle.
Well, and every time these two teams have played this season, it's been very close.
Yeah.
They're division rivals. They're close games. There's a lot of desperation when it comes to Yorkton because Yorkton knew going into this week they only had 2 games this week, and both were against Weyburn. And quite frankly, if they had any hopes of getting back into the playoff race, they were going to have to probably win both games in regulation. So while it wasn't a good start, the last 40 were pretty darn good for Yorkton. Unfortunately, as most of the coaches will say, you got to play 60 minutes to win in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and unfortunately Yorkton couldn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you said it was an important game for Weyburn, obviously, and that Yorkton has some desperation going on right now. And this weekend, we'll look at this later on today in the show, but this weekend is another big opportunity for kind of a nail in the coffin, so to speak, for a couple of teams.
I was going to say, not just for one team.
We'll get into that later on. But, big win for Weyburn, and the fact that they were able to hold on after that kind of crazy comeback.
Right.
And not the only comeback that night either. Like you said earlier, there was a lot of craziness going on Tuesday night. It was a bizarro night, I guess, in the SJ.
It was. That's right. And then yesterday the Melfort Mustangs won their third straight game with a 6-2 win over Kindersley. And then unfortunately for the Estevan Bruins, they couldn't hold on to their 2-1 lead, falling 3-2 in overtime to Melville. So only 1 point picked up by the Bruins. But I look at it for Melfort now, 2 points back of the L'Orange Ice Wolves for fourth in the SJHL standings. And now only 4 points back of both the Flin Flon Bombers and the Humboldt Broncos for second and third, respectively, in the SJHL. The big difference is games. But that's a good segue into our second point. Yeah,
for sure. Our second point, of course, is going to be a look at the standings. So let's pull up the standings now. And there has been, some tightening of races and some kind of defining of races as well in the last couple of days. So, Jeremy, when you look at the standings here, what has changed since last week when we looked at this?
Well, to be honest with you, not much when you think about it. The thing is, when you look at the standings, I guess the only thing that off the top of my head that's probably changed a little bit is a little bit of slight improvement on the gap between, obviously, the Weyburn Red Wings and the Notre Dame Hounds. I think last week it was 6 points. Now it's 7.
Yeah.
But more games have been played. So as a result, it's getting a little bit more tricky for the Notre Dame Hounds as they try and chase down a playoff spot. The good news for them is 2 very important games this week against the team ahead of them, which we'll get into later. But I think the other interesting thing for me, too, is obviously, we talk about 2 through 5 right now in the SJHL standings between, Humboldt's at 2 with 63 and Melfort is at 5 with 59. That's only 4 points. And, for those teams, all 4, you could ask all 4. All 4 definitely want home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs. And I think for some of those teams, it's more important than others. But you want home ice advantage. Yeah. You want home ice advantage in the playoffs, and obviously with games in hand, that's where it becomes a little bit interesting and everything like that. I mean, L'Orange, after that 4-game and 5-night road trip down south, they've had 10 days off, and they've been forced to watch Humboldt, Flin Flon, and Melfort play all these games to try and make up games in hand. And as a result, both Humboldt and Flin Flon have already passed L'Orange, and Melfort's only 2 points back of the Ice Wolves, and they still have 2 games in hand. And I was texting our friend of the show, Matt Barrett, who loves when I he loves when I say friend of the show. He's friend of the show. But he mentioned to me this morning they still have a couple of games against L'Orange head to head.
Yeah.
So that's going to be huge. And quite frankly, you're looking at the standings right now, and guess what? Potential playoff preview. First
absolutely.
round. But that race between 2 and 5 is going to be real interesting. And then the other thing that stands out for me, before I'll let you take over for a bit, and I'll try and catch my breath, is the battle kind of between 6, 7, and 8.
Yep.
And when you look at the points, you say, well, Jer, what are you talking about? Weyburn's 8 points back of Estevan. But Weyburn's got three games in hand. You win all those games, you're only 2 points back. Plus, they have a head-to-head game left. They still have one more game against each other. Mm-hmm. Then you throw in the Nipawin Hawks. They're only 4 points back of Estevan with a game in hand. Nipawin has the rest of the week off. Ooh. Estevan, they have 2 games in Humboldt this weekend.
Yep.
Going to be very tough. Humboldt's a very tough rink to play in, as matchup. Rory McGoran told us over the weekend. And then, of course, the Weyburn Red Wings, they got 3 games this weekend. And you win all 3 of those games, and boy, oh boy, 6, 7, 8 just becomes, I mean, it's interesting right now, but it becomes as interesting as 2 through 5.
Yeah.
So that's what stands out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll let you take over.
I mean, all of that. And you mentioned that there's a couple teams in that 2 to 5. I'm going to even include Estevan in this conversation slightly, but in terms of the home ice advantage, I know that they're in an uphill battle now for Estevan to get to that point. It's not going to be easy at all. But home ice advantage, I think, is so important. And I think of a team like Larange, for example. They're 500 on the road. Melfort, 500 on the road. Estevan, under 500 on the road. Flin Flon, Humboldt, Battlefords, they're the only teams across the league that have above a 500 record on the road.
When I was talking about 2 through 5 when it comes to the home ice, the two teams I was referring to when it comes to which two would want home ice the more would be Larange and Melfort. And the fact that they line up right now in the standings potentially for a playoff matchup makes it even more juicy.
Yeah.
Because then those two teams are definitely going to be competing for home ice advantage, because then if they have to go a 7-game series, I mean, it's been a tight season series between those two teams. Where's Game 7 going to be played?
Exactly.
That might come down to it. I mean, we saw how valuable home ice advantage was in last year's SJHL playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a really important one. And, I'm looking at now the home records, and Melfort's got a 761 win percentage at home. Larange, 17-5-3 at home, 731 win. Like, that's going to be, it is going to be very, very huge. And I think Larange is going to want to get back on the ice because, they've had a bit of a lighter schedule as of late. So I think they want to get back on the ice and kind of cement their spot in the standings. I think they're maybe getting a little itchy up there, to get back on the ice. But, let's get into our third topic now. The standings are always fun. We could go on for hours about the standings.
Easy. But especially at this time of the year.
Oh my gosh, there's so many storylines. And speaking of storylines, last week, Jeremy, you and I had a rousing conversation about the Defenseman of the Year, who might be the finalists for that award, the top 3. Today we're going to look at the rookies across the league, all positions, skaters specifically. But let's have a look at the rookie scoring rankings. And there are some names on this list that are going to cause some debate here, and even not on this list that you're seeing right now, but a couple other names as well that we'll get into. So when you look at scoring, before we get into like the top 3, I mean, really what stands out to you? Because there are some really great performances this year so far.
I think what stands out is the fact that, similar to the defenseman conversation we had last week, I should say, not last year, last week, there's a lot of good rookies this year.
Yeah, there is.
There's a lot of good rookies in the SJHL this year. Whether that be, 16-year-old rookies like Riley Ash and Karsten Cater. You have some really good 18-year-old rookies, Dylan Ruptash, Alexis Silvestri, and then even a 19-year-old rookie like Thomas Wright.
Yeah.
That's the tricky thing I find with the rookie conversation. It always causes a bit of a debate because quite frankly, you could be almost, other than 20, you could be a rookie pretty much at any age in the SJHL. Which makes it a little bit interesting, because when you look at the point totals, it's like, well, okay, so-and-so might be a couple years older than another player, but technically they're a rookie. They're both rookies.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where I think that's where the conversation amongst everybody has their own opinion on it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of talented, rookies, in quotations, you can't see me during the air quotes, in the SJHL this year. And I think that's where, when you look at this list, this top 10 list, I think similar to the defenseman, I think you can make an argument for a lot of these players to be in that top 3 when it comes to finalists.
Yeah, and I look at like a lot of these names, even going down to the top 20 of guys who might be in the conversation for best player on their team, let alone best rookie.
Sure.
And I think that's also comes into play here quite a lot as well, and how important these individual players are for their teams.
Well, let's actually, we have the top 10 on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Here's just going to rattle off some players that aren't in the top 10 in scoring that are having spectacular years.
Yeah.
Maddox Amaral, Jackson Allen, Brett Butts, FX Bedard. FX having a great season in Nipwin. Van Blaricom. Imagine if Van Blaricom played the entire season with Humboldt.
He'd be right up there.
He would probably be right at the top. Yep. Casey Coyle, David Ryu. There's lots. It goes on and on and on when it comes to the rookie conversation, I think, in the SJHL. But, I mean, that top 10 list, I think it's fully loaded.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see, it's also cool to see, in my opinion at least, to see a couple of defensemen also in the top 10 when it comes to scoring, with Jordan Gibbs and Karsten Cater.
Yeah.
That also stands up.
Very important players, again, for their teams. And Jordan Gibbs, I think he's getting a lot of top ice time with Tynan Ewart, if I'm not mistaken. They play a lot together. Karsten Cater's if you look across the stat board here,
sure.
The only player with double-digit power play assists. It's Karsten Cater. He's got 16 power. He's a power play quarterback for the Humboldt Broncos.
100%.
Top 3 team in the league right now. Humboldt Broncos. He's 16 years old. So that's a big factor in this overall conversation, and it just leads to that many more debates between some of these guys. Humboldt, shout out. We talk about this with Rory McGoran quite a lot on SJHL Weekly, just how impactful a lot of their young players have been and what kind of roles they're given in Humboldt. And Karsten Cater, Matthew Van Blaerkom are really shining examples of that. And Maddox Amaral, I shouldn't overlook him either. 10 goals for him. So, really good conversation. Now, if you want, I think I put my top 3 defensemen out first last time. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first again?
You can go through first.
Okay, so
I'm curious who you say.
This is hard because I'm gonna go with 3 guys who I think are just very, very important to their individual teams. Maybe not necessarily.
But that's not that wouldn't be the award though.
That's fair. Top rookie. I guess
that's not the award though. It's top rookie.
That. Yes.
So pick your top 3
valuable rookies
nominees. Top 3 nominees for Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. My first one is Riley Ash. Now, 16 years old. Maybe that's not surprising that he's second in rookie scoring. But I think that he's played such a huge role for the Melfort Mustangs, again, with how good they've been, and he's right at the top of that list for them
100%.
in terms of performances throughout the year. At the age of 16, he's putting up all these huge points. He's playing with some great players and doing great things there. I'm going to go with Dylan Ruptash for my second one, leading rookies in goals, leading the Yorkton Terriers in points, if I'm not mistaken. And he's really kind of the heartbeat of that team. And I think that he's pulled them through in a lot of nights when maybe some other wasn't going their way, and he's pulled them through on a lot of nights in Yorkton. And then I'm going to go with Karsten Cater for my number 3. Just again, his impact as a 16-year-old defenseman on the Humboldt Broncos has been outstanding this year. He's a power play quarterback at the age of 16. And I just think, the sky's the limit for him as he continues his SJHL career. So those are my 3. And I see you smiling over there because I know you're probably going to have some different answers.
No, but I actually wish I went first.
Did you say the same 3?
All 3.
No way.
All 3 the same.
Wow. Okay.
All 3 the same. For me, at least, too. Some very similar points. You talked about the roles that all 3 of these players play on their teams.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, look at how valuable Riley Ash has been for the Melfort Mustangs this year as a 16-year-old. He's playing with Zach Summers, and they're.
I think that's the biggest factor is 16. Like we can't overlook that how huge it is.
It makes it even more. It makes it more impressive.
Multiplies.
Now, with that being said, the one thing that definitely stands out to me too is going to Dylan Ruptash. Is like you said, he leads all the rookies in goals.
Yeah.
But again, like you mentioned too, a lot of these rookies in the top 10 guys. Could we pull up the rookie standings one more time, just to put it up as a visual? Dylan Ruptash is one of 2 players on this list that are on teams that aren't currently in the playoffs.
Right.
Everybody else, are on a playoff team, and quite frankly, you look at the list, are fairly up there in the standings. And I think about Dylan Ruptash, and in fact, he found the back of the net 19 times already this season, for his team. And like you said, how important he has been for that team, even though they're in 10th. You can't overlook how good of a season he's had as a. I'm really excited to see how Dylan Ruptash performs next season.
Absolutely.
He's going to have over 20 goals this season. What's he going to do as a sophomore next year in the SJHL? And then Karsten Cater, of course, like you touched about. I'll just echo your points pretty much. He's a power play quarterback for the Humboldt Broncos. He was so impressive at the SJHL MJHL showcase for that under 18 team. And I mean, that under 18 team is pretty much on this leaderboard. For the most part, is pretty much on this leaderboard. But he's superb. And now, with that being said, I'll say this, similar to what we said last week for the defenseman. You can make an argument for a lot of these guys. Yeah.
And I think the one that I would really want to make an argument for, and I really battled on not getting him in my top 3, was Alexi Silvestri from Flin Flon.
Sure.
And again, I think
he's tied with Dylan Ruptash for points right now.
For points,
going into this weekend.
Yeah, and I think that I think his role, especially now with Jaden Mercier's situation, I think his role is only going to get more important for Flin Flon going forward and into the playoff stretch and everything. So I think of him as another guy that by the end of the year, if this is going to be, if the conversation is going to change at all, that he's going to push his way into that top 3 in some form or fashion. I just think he's a really solid player. He's got a lot of skill, and I think he fits Flin Flon's personality, how they play the game really, really well. So I look for him to be that one guy who's going to maybe force his way into this conversation before it's all said and done.
For sure. There's so many good rookies in the SJHL this year, which is obviously is great for the league and the league's future of the league. So I think that the rookie of the year and the defenseman of the year, I think, are going to, when it comes to everybody, all the voters of the year-end awards, they're going to be close. They're going to be very close votes. Before we head to the video chat lines to be joined by the wonderful voice of the Weyburn Red Wings, Nick Nielsen, I alluded to it. The tease of the SJHL MJHL showcase. We talked about it. All those U18 players were superb at the SJHL MJHL showcase. But during the showcase, we had a wonderful intern coming to us from SAIT, April Zilke. The last name sounds familiar.
It should.
Sister of Ethan Zilke.
Yeah.
Humble Broncos. She helped the SJHL produce a recap video of the SJHL MJHL showcase. And before we get to Nick, we are going to show that to you right now here on SJHL Insider.
Forces it out. Here's a chance. Side of the net. Great save. The rebound, but they score! Goal centering pass. Score! Finishing it off. In front was number 9, Ian Bell.
So a big shout out to April for producing that video. Clark, I didn't want to show you that video until we played it live on air.
That was the first time. That was wonderful.
What were your thoughts on it?
Two things really stood out to me. When Riley Morgan scored his goal, and he was behind him was Leighton Haloyan, I think, from Melfort, and there's so much height difference there. That was, I just kind of giggled to myself. And then right at the end, that was such a cool moment. Alexa Babich and Kian Calder, teammates last year on the Centennial Cup team for Estevan, got to kind of reconnect, and that was really cool. Very good video overall. She got all the goals on camera.
Wow, she had some help.
She had some help. I was going to say.
I was there too.
Shout out Matt Barrett as well, friend of the show.
Yeah, Matt Barrett was on the
who was also in the vicinity.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like really awesome video. You got to see pretty much everything there. Hits. You got to see some scrappiness. You got to see some goals, some saves. So that was great. Great job.
I texted her yesterday when she finished the video and sent it to me, and I said my favorite part was actually the kids singing the national anthem.
Yeah, very cool.
Because it was really cool because I think it was the first game of the very first day. Stands were packed, lots of kids, belting, "Oh Canada." It was very cool, and she got it on camera.
Also really cool how she kind of morphed all of the national anthems into one portion of the video, because you could see it was different games, but it wasn't. It wasn't?
That wasn't.
Because I saw Josh Cote in net for one and Cam Herdlicka.
Oh, the footage.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So the song was all one game, but the footage throughout the song was all the games mixed in. So I thought that was really neat. Well done. Well done. Hand clap.
Big shout out to April. And if you'd like to watch the video again, it will be up on the SJHL YouTube channel after SJHL Insider. So there you go. Actually, around 3 o'clock Saskatchewan time. But we don't want to keep our guest Nick Nielsen waiting any longer, so we're going to head to the video chat. There he is. It's the play-by-play voice of the Weyburn Red Wings, Nick Nielsen. Nick, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great as usual. Jeremy, how are things going your way?
You know what? We're having a good time here. We're having a good time. We're surviving. It's a little chilly today compared to the past couple of weeks, but it's a good. Hey, playoff hockey's around the corner. Last month of the regular season, can't complain whatsoever. So let's get right into it. Yeah, you had a big game on Tuesday. The Weyburn Red Wings, a 7-5 win over the Yorkton Terriers. What a roller coaster ride that game was, Nick. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, they definitely gave me a bit of a scare by the end of that one here. 5-0 lead after the first, and it's a bit of a perfect storm for that one, where the Red Wings coming in after first regulation loss in quite a while, so they're looking amped up to get back in that one. They're looking amped up to get revenge over Yorkton for beating them a couple nights ago. So, we were pretty excited to play our first road game in 7 games, and we came out and played pretty dang well through that first period, and Yorkton happened to be a little bit sleepy, I think, to start things off, and then through the second and third period, Yorkton woke up while Weyburn slowly fell asleep a little bit. So yeah, they definitely scared me a little bit, but at the end of the day, they got the win, and it's an important one here as we're getting down the stretch here towards playoff time.
We sure are. Hey, I got to ask you about this recent stretch for the Weyburn Red Wings. I mean, 8-1-2 in the last 11 games, 18 out of a possible 22 points. It's a pretty incredible run when you think about it. What have you seen from their play that's kind of made the difference between this run and maybe earlier on in the season?
Just consistency's been such a big thing, and it's throughout the entire lineup. Defensively, our guys are protecting the net a lot more. Daza Mitchell in net, he's really come alive in this second half of the year since 2023 started here. Offensively, now we've got a little bit more consistency with guys now kind of figuring out who they like to play with in those lines, because the Red Wings have brought in a decent amount of guys this year, and when you bring in guys, that means there's going to be change in the lineup, and so you're going to have to learn some of that chemistry again. Well, now we've got a de facto top line here with Morgan, Hassman, and Mason. They've been playing together here for over a month, and they've been lighting it up ever since. Our second line here, when Meekwan Tallman's healthy, Tallman, Turin, and Kalen, they've been playing together, and they've been lights out ever since. And now Simon Pollock's kind of stepped into that line a little bit since the Tallman injury. So you're seeing a lot more consistency throughout the lineup for the Red Wings, and that's been the really big difference. Just guys are playing more what they're comfortable with.
And it's crazy to think about, but when the Weyburn Red Wings acquired Riley Morgan, it seemed like there was a massive shift in the team's play. Maybe just talk a little bit about what he's obviously brought to this Weyburn Red Wings club and the impact he's brought to the lineup.
So the nomination form for MVP and all the different league awards came out here, and I'm not going to hide it. I'm nominating Riley Morgan 100% because the difference that he's made on the team here has been absolutely insane. I wrote it down earlier today. Since he showed up, we have had about a goal per game increase so far, a little bit higher than that.
Wow.
We were sitting at about 2.7 goals per game before the Christmas break or before December, and then Riley Morgan shows up and plays that December 2nd game, and he's already got a couple points with Ty Mason in that first one. And since then, we've been operating at about 3.8 goals per game ever since Riley Morgan showed up. Ty Mason, now that he's playing with Riley Morgan, he seemed like he's come awake and he's playing a lot more and been playing better. And Jacob Kalin now out of nowhere, he's not one of the top guys on our team, or not top line, I should say. But going down to that second line, I think, has been great for Jacob Kalin because he's been lighting it up ever since, and he's been scoring lots. Right. So the effect that Riley Morgan has had has been all over the lineup. He's a guy who's got such a unique talent when it comes to passing that puck through so many crowded areas. Like, he just finds passing lanes that don't exist. Like, it's mind-boggling to watch with him sometimes, and it's clear, like, the effect that he's had on this lineup has just been insane.
Well, and even to add somebody with so much speed like he does, and there's definitely some size in the Weyburn Red Wings lineup. Now it seems like it's a very versatile forward group up front, whether you want to play a run and gun style or you want to kind of muck it up and play a 2-1 hockey game. It seems like the Wings are now more versatile when it comes to playing really any style of hockey.
Every line's got somebody who can score. Elijah Anderson, who he's really come alive since 2023 started as well. He's on our third line for most nights, third or second line, and he can score. Every line's got somebody who can pass the puck well. Every line's got somebody who can hit. So you look through the Red Wings lineup right now, and there's not a lot of weaknesses throughout, especially the forward group. Defensive group has been playing really, really well through 2023 too. I don't want to discredit them, but our forwards have stepped things up and have been scoring really, really well lately. And I think it's just because of the mix of styles on the ice now. Every single time you put a line out for the Red Wings, you don't know what exactly you're going to get. You have a group who can score, you've got players on the ice who can score, you got players on the ice who can hit, you got players on the ice who can set up a pass. And because of that, it's made up for a versatile attack.
For sure. 8th place right now going into the weekend, 4 points back of 7th. 8 points back of 6th, and there's lots on the line now for the Weyburn Red Wings in the last 11 games of the regular season. And of course, now you don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves. You still have the Notre Dame Hounds behind you, 7 points back, a couple of big games this weekend, but safe to say there is a lot on the line the next 11 games for the Weyburn Red Wings.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, things look favorable for us to be making the playoffs right now. There's 4 games left of the season, though, against Notre Dame. They're right behind us. So those are going to be some absolutely huge games, starting off with the one that's coming up here on Friday. And the Red Wings, they've been a hot team as of late. Notre Dame hasn't had the same record through the last few games that Weyburn's had. So, you can look at that and go, well, maybe we can, expect to get those wins. Well, you look at the season series so far, it's a little bit of a different story. We've beat the wheels off Notre Dame once this year. They've beat the wheels off us once this year. So, yes, the things look favorable for us to be making the playoffs right now, but we've still got some big games ahead of us to win. That said, the mood around the room is still, we're trying to climb the ladder. The Red Wings are not completely focused on the guys behind them. They're focused on what's ahead. We still looking at our schedule. We think we can catch Nipawin. We think that there is a chance that we could even still catch Estevan. And how awesome would it be if that last game of the season was for the Viterra Division title? I mean, everybody wants to see that. That would be fantastic. So, yeah, we're not getting too far ahead of ourselves. We're still looking at it game by game. But when we sit down and look at the schedules for the 4 teams around us here, with us and Notre Dame and Estevan and Nipawin, those are the schedules that we're watching. And with the way we're playing right now, we think there is the opportunity to maybe climb a couple spots here before the end of the season.
So you mentioned the vibe around the room when it comes to this hockey team, but what about the vibe around the rink and the vibe around the community with this, red hot Weyburn Red Wings club? I've been watching the games on Hockey TV. It seems like the community of Weyburn has taken notice of how well you guys have been playing down the stretch. What's the vibe around the community right now surrounding this team?
I mean, the vibe around the community is awesome. You take a look at our crowd sizes, and what's reported on the SJHL website is probably a little bit light even for what we're seeing in our rink, because we've had a little bit of a ticket counting issue with some of our season tickets, but that's a story for another day. But no, I think we're probably seeing close to 700 people per game, which is way up from last year. I've had some people come up and tell me that this is one of the best Red Wings teams that we've seen put together since the December break. So it's awesome. I mean, the guys go out in the community. Ty Mason, being a local boy, might as well have a crown on his head walking around town right now these days. He absolutely runs this place, and it's awesome. I mean, the community's awesome. The crowds are getting into the games more and more, and now that we're getting close to playoff hockey, that buzz is just getting even better. Like, I'm really excited to see what the crowd looks like here if and when playoffs come. And I'm saying if just to cover my bases, but I think it is going to happen. Who knows? But either way, like, I can't wait for that atmosphere to get here, because it's just going to be a raucous crowd, and I love firing that crowd up too, so it's going to be fun.
Fair enough. Yeah, of course, if for people that aren't watching, but you should know by now, Nick does double duty, play-by-play and PA announcing, and every time I hear it, it's even more impressive. All right, final question for you, Nick. Big weekend. Friday at home against the Notre Dame Hounds, Saturday at home against the Yorkton Terriers again, and then family day against Notre Dame. And this is a pretty big weekend for the Weyburn Red Wings. One way or another, it's very big, but maybe just tee up that matchup and what you expect from the Hounds on Friday.
Yeah, those two games against the Notre Dame Hounds are the ones that are really big. Yorkton, it's our last game of the season against them. They're struggling to keep in contention for the playoffs. They're not out of it yet, but we really got to focus on Notre Dame. They've got great goaltending in Inabene at the back end there, and they've got a couple guys who can really put the puck in the net. Carson Bayless has really come alive, I think, since showing up in Notre Dame this year, and he's a guy that we really got to watch out for. Jared Sitch, a great defenseman, is well there, so anytime he's on the ice, he's a threat from the back end, and he shuts things down really, really well. The Red Wings, I think they've got a little sour taste in their mouth from how that game went in Radville. I don't know if they felt like they were distracted going into that game or something, but the Red Wings know that they didn't play to the best of their ability that game, and now with how this streak has gone on since then, the Red Wings are going to be ready for a big battle with this one. Notre Dame's going to come in. They're going to be a hungry team. They're going to be angry and trying to get into that playoff spot, and for this game, it's going to be just as big for them as it is for us. So it's a preview of what playoff hockey should probably look like. Two teams who are fighting for their collective lives to get what they're looking for here. Notre Dame trying to get that final spot in the playoffs. Red Wings still trying to climb a few spots before the end of the season. And I think, it's going to be an early preview of what that playoff hockey should look like. It's going to be two teams that are only going to grow to hate each other probably the more this end of the season goes on. We've got 4 games against them before the end of March here. So it's going to be some big games here, and this Friday is basically going to start the playoff series.
100%. Well, Nick, thank you so much, as always, for taking some time to join us. We really appreciate it. And have a great 3 calls this weekend, as it's going to be a busy but exciting one for the Weyburn Red Wings. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. That's the play-by-play voice of the Weyburn Red Wings, Nick Nielsen. Like we said, busy weekend for the Weyburn Red Wings. Of course, it's a long weekend, too. Friday, Saturday, Monday for the Weyburn Red Wings. Good news, they don't got to travel far. 2 home games, and then Monday afternoon, it's a 5 o'clock start. Monday at 5 against the Notre Dame
early evening.
That's the early evening. That's 5 o'clock's the evening. Remember we had this debate?
Yes. Yeah.
5 o'clock's the evening.
I think it's evening.
No, it is. So. Yeah. 100% evening.
Yeah. I think 4 o'clock is the cutoff for evening.
We're not getting
That's
this
the debate, though. That's the debate.
But, I mean, you and I have talked about... Nick kind of echoed some of the things we've talked about for the last couple of months when it comes to this Weyburn Red Wings team. And I mean, we've talked about it. Jamie and Rory have talked about it. Just the impact Riley Morgan's obviously had with the Weyburn Red Wings, and just how that team's really turned it around since the acquisition of him. I mean, they weren't in a playoff spot when they acquired Riley Morgan, and now they're in a playoff spot, have some cushion, and they might climb the standings here a little bit and get a better positioning come playoff time.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to Morgan, I mean, we talked about this on the trade deadline show that we did. Just the the amount of skill and dynamic ability that he has. And I love the way Nick kind of phrased it, is that it allowed a guy like Jacob Kaelin to maybe move down in the lineup slightly, and it allowed other guys to move down in the lineup. And I think what it did is just balanced it so nicely there. Nicely is maybe a loose term, a light term, but like it just balanced it so well. And the team overall, like Nick said, the community's buzzing about how solid this team is.
Right.
And I think every night you see it. Somebody else steps up most nights, and it just it's very apparent that the way Cote Mapes has built this team, top to bottom, is just they're clicking on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders.
Well, and to add to that point, with a guy like Jacob Kaelin, for example, before like you mentioned, he was playing in the top line, but now dropping to that second line,
Right.
you not necessarily have to go up against the best defensive pairing or of another team or something like that. So it allows some good opportunities, and as a result, we've seen him produce for the last, really since they acquired Riley Morgan. So, but a big weekend for the Weyburn Red Wings and a big weekend for the Notre Dame Hounds. But before we get into that weekend preview, you know what we got to talk about, Clark.
Absolutely. I have a feeling I know where this is going.
It's a certain side-by-side
Yeah.
that you could potentially win,
Yep.
courtesy of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. It's the SJHL Raffle. There it is. Brief delay.
Ba-dunk.
There it is.
There it is.
The SJHL Raffle.
That was the sound of the thing jumping onto the screen. That wasn't a rim shot for a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was hop. Yeah.
Da-dunk.
For sure. The SJHL Raffle is underway. The tickets are on sale now. 1 for $25, 3 for $60, 10 for $100. There are only 5,000 available, though. So get your tickets now, sjhlraffle.ca. The tickets are available all the way until April 23rd. And then we will be making the draw on Thursday, April 27th, live on SJHL Insider from the Polaris dealership here in Regina.
That's this program, the SJHL
Yes,
Insider.
it is. Yes, it is, Clark. Yes,
this
it
one.
is. Good observation.
Thank you.
You can get your tickets sjhlraffle.ca or to get any other information. So there you go.
Very exciting.
All right.
And I'm seeing a lot of teams posting it around too. They're sharing it up.
Well,
The
because
hype is
everyone's
getting going.
excited about winning a side-by-side.
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, exactly.
Who
And
wouldn't want a side-by-side
It's firing up,
courtesy of the
guys.
SJ? And it's not even, it's not shown in this picture, but there's going to be a custom wrap on it.
yeah, it's going to be SJHL customized. Guys.
Yeah, there's going to be an
Don't sleep
SJHL
on it.
custom wrap on it.
Yeah.
When we'll get a picture of that soon.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Exciting.
Anyways, let's head to the weekend. Let's preview the weekend. And we'll start with Friday. Busy night Friday. 5 games on the schedule. The Melfort Mustangs will visit the Melville Millionaires. This kicks off a home-and-home between the two clubs. We talked about Weyburn playing host to Notre Dame. That's a big one. The Estevan Bruins visit the Humboldt Broncos for 2 games this weekend. The same can be said for L'Orange visiting Kindersley. They'll be at the West Central Event Center for 2 games. But boy, oh boy, Clark. I know I usually ask you what your game of the weekend is, but I think the game, I can just say right now, game of the weekend might be Battleford's at Flin Flon Friday night, 7:30 Whitney Forum. And guess what?
Oh, what?
It's hockey night in the North.
No way.
Yes way. And
Get out.
That means, guess what? Admission's free.
Holy cow.
The Whitney Forum is going to be bumping. Friday night, Bombers, Stars. I mean, we've seen the games they played already this season have been very good.
Talk about marquee.
Anyways,
Yeah.
let's move on to Saturday. That's going to be a great game. We got five more games on Saturday.
Yeah.
Going to be Yorkton visiting Weyburn, and then of course we touched on a lot of repeat matchups. Battleford's against Flin Flon again, Estevan against Humboldt, L'Orange, Kindersley, Melville, Melfort, and then there's no games on Sunday, but on the holiday Monday, Family Day, where you should be spending time with your family on Monday, maybe take them to a hockey game.
Sure.
Kindersley visits Humboldt, 3 o'clock puck drop, and Weyburn and Notre Dame in Wilcox, 5 o'clock.
I didn't have that graphic in there. My bad.
Oh, that's okay.
We can do it in
That's
post.
okay. It's Monday. I didn't throw you off.
It's okay. We'll get by.
So, what's your one? I'll reword it. I won't say game of the weekend. I'll say, what's the one thing you are keeping your eye out for this weekend?
So last weekend was Nipawin in general, right?
Yeah.
It was, we got to see what happens with Nipawin. Very interesting how that kind of played out. This weekend, it's we just talked to Nick. It's Weyburn. Like I said earlier on in the show, callback to earlier on in this show. I said that there's some nails potentially going in some coffins this weekend. Now, one thing that Nick pointed out, and I 100% did not realize this, is how many times Weyburn and Notre Dame play before the end of the season.
They still got 4 more meetings. And that's why 7 points isn't that much.
Yeah.
Because if Notre Dame won all 4, they're 1 point up.
It's right there. They're right there. So the one thing that I was going to say before I realized that was, this is a huge, if Weyburn wins this game, they can really put a damper on Notre Dame's efforts to get back into it. But Notre Dame has 3 more shots at it.
Sure.
After this one, depending on what happens. So it is a very important 4-point game. But again, I was fully unaware. Thank you, Nick, for alerting me.
Well, we had talked about it, I don't think this past week on Monday on SJHL Weekly, but the previous week.
Yeah.
Myself, Rory, and Jamie kind of agreed with those 4 games between Notre Dame and Weyburn. If Notre Dame wants to make the playoffs, they're probably going to have to win at least 3 out of 4 of them in regulation.
Yeah. You can't give Weyburn any points.
Because if you win 3 out of 4 of them in regulation, you gain 4 points.
Yeah.
You gain 4 points on them in the standings. And one thing we haven't mentioned is Notre Dame does have a game in hand on Weyburn.
Okay.
So they say they got those 4 points, then they're only 3 back. If they win that game in hand, you're only 1 point back. So it's a lot more realistic.
Yeah, Notre Dame's got some winning to do.
But
this is it.
It's crunch time.
I know everyone's going to talk about Battleford Flin Flon, of course.
Yeah, that's
Estevan Humboldt stands out as well, of course. But I think that to me is the game. That one.
Friday?
It starts it off. Notre Dame Weyburn, the best of 4, I guess, going forward. I think that one kicks it off for me, and I think that one to me is the game of the weekend.
Sure. The other thing too that stands out for me this weekend, I know we've talked a lot about Weyburn this week.
Yeah, deservedly so.
Right. But just let's play the hypothetical game.
Love that.
Estevan's 2 games in Humboldt this weekend. And Nipawin doesn't play. Weyburn wins all 3 of their games this weekend. They are going to move ahead of Nipawin for 7th. Nipawin would have a game in hand, but then they're only 2 points back of Estevan if Estevan for some reason lost both their games to Humboldt. It's very interesting. And that's why I said earlier when we were talking about the standings, after this weekend, 6, 7, 8 might just become as interesting as 2 through 5.
Yeah, 100%.
So time will tell. And then you look at 2 through 5. Humboldt, 2 games at home against Estevan. Yep. Flin Flon, 2 games at home against Battlefords. Laurent, 2 games on the road in Kindersley. And Melfort, home and home with Melville. So all 4 of those teams play 2 games.
You could legitimately see a complete flip-flop of that 2 through 5 as well.
I mean, hypothetically, you could.
Yeah. Like if
hypothetically, you could see
if Battlefords displays some dominance this weekend, and if Estevan comes out because they're fighting for their lives as well, you could legitimately see. You could see Humboldt, Flin Flon go down 2 spots each.
You know what I was going to say? Hypothetically, you could see all 4 teams tied with the same amount of points. It's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Even better. Man, it's just everything just seems to add up. And if that's the case and that does happen, that just means Estevan has at least won one of the games, maybe 2 of the games against Humboldt. They're even closer to that top 5 again. And then it's just, oh my gosh, it just never ends. Well, it will end eventually, but as of right now, it never ends.
It never ends, except when it ends on March 12th.
Yeah, right. But until then,
March.
The storylines just continue 14th. To evolve. March 14th. It just every week we get on this show, it just continues to evolve. Whereas one storyline morphs into another one, and it changes another storyline. So everything is so interesting right now.
So here we'll wrap up with a couple quick hitter points.
Love it.
Humboldt, since the last time we had the show, Humboldt and Flin Flon have clinched playoff spots.
Right.
There are X's beside their names. So Battlefords, Humboldt, Flin Flon have clinched.
Shout out to Humboldt, 9-1 in their last 10.
Yeah, they're playing some great hockey.
Yeah.
And I mean, all 3 of those teams are playing good hockey right now. Battlefords and Flin Flon are 7-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Humboldt 9-1. Anyways, so those 3 teams have punched tickets in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Following this weekend, if my math is correct, And most times it is.
You're usually pretty good, and I will say.
Numbers are usually my thing. L'Orange and Melfort can both clinch playoff spots this weekend. So that is a possibility. So we could see some more teams clinching playoff spots this weekend. You mentioned about potential nails in the coffin. We could see maybe some teams actually being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs.
Okay.
This weekend, because it's a long weekend and the amount of games that are in action. And maybe we see some gaps get closer or further apart.
Yep.
I feel like we talk about it each weekend, saying, oh, maybe this is the weekend that we kind of get a bit better idea. Maybe there's more separation. Maybe we kind of have, the image becomes a bit more clear. I think what's going to happen this weekend is either the image is going to get extremely clear or it's going to get even foggier.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. There's no staying the same, because we are, like we said, we're getting in crunch time. Some teams only have like 10 games left or under.
Right.
So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. And
it's just like, get out to the rinks. Like, get to the rinks. Get to see these guys. Because these games right now, there's so many good ones. And, we talk a lot about the teams that are in playoff spots. The teams that are out currently, as of right now, out of a spot, they are fighting right now for their lives. They're putting up some great efforts. You saw it, Kindersley beat Nipawin the other night. Like, they're fighting. Every one of these teams are putting up great efforts night in, night out. So no game is not important at this moment in time. It's really, truly a great time and to be a SJHL hockey fan. Like, we're getting spoiled.
Sure. And before we pump up all the games this weekend, there is one more final point I want to get to.
Yes.
This was breaking news yesterday.
Oh, dang.
There is a new Direct West commitment in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League that we should give a big congratulations to, and that's Josh Cote of the Battleford's North Stars, who committed to playing for Augustana NCAA Division I yesterday evening. Very big congratulations. I mean, Josh came on the scene at the very beginning of this season, and boy, oh boy, he took the SJHL by storm, to say the least. And he was superb. He's been superb all season. He was superb at the SJHL MJHL showcase. And a big congratulations to committing to Augustana NCAA Division I. I mean, you get a scholarship or a chance to play for a commitment to an NCAA Division I school. That's not an easy feat.
No.
So big congratulations to Josh. Very well earned, and he's had a superb season, and a big reason why Battleford is where they are in the standings.
Yeah, the Augies, I think they call themselves, the Augustana Augies, I think. It's what it looks like on their Twitter.
Vikings.
It's goaugie.com. Augie M Hockey. Augie Men's Hockey. So maybe their nickname is Augie. Augustana. Makes sense.
Sure.
They do have a Viking as their logo, so it could be very well Vikings. But, like, shocker of the year that Josh Cote, after his performances.
Yeah. It's the way he's performed. It was only a matter of
time. And I mean,
only a matter of time.
It's funny because you got to see at the showcase, when you were watching on Hockey TV, for example, they were all MJ broadcasters, Manitoba broadcasters that were broadcasting those games.
Correct.
And to hear them raving about how good Josh Cote looks, how solid he looks in there. Wow, he looks poised. Wow, he looks confident. And that was all game long. That's all they said about 100%. When he was in the net that game. And it was just very clear that, this guy has played his way into a lot of eyeballs this season, and I think a lot of people took notice. Hard to argue that they're the best team in the league for, like you said, for a reason, and he's a big part of that. Unreal. Great job to Josh.
A 2.31 goals against average, a 937 save percentage, and a 27 2-1 record this season for Josh Cote. So again, massive congratulations to Josh on his commitment to Augustana NCAA Division I. Before we go, we have to give a big shout out to our sponsors once again: Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGU, Direct West Tourism Saskatchewan, SGI, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, and Young's Equipment. Thank you so much for your support, because again, without your support, these shows would not be possible. Be sure to stay up to date with the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League across all of our social medias. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you'll find all the highlights, our shows, and anything else here in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. So to stay up to date, of course, SJHL.ca has all the latest information in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. In total this weekend, we have 12 games on tap. 5 Friday, 5 Saturday, 2 Monday. If you can't make it out to your local rink, you can catch all the action on Hockey TV. A subscription's only $29.99 a month. And boy, oh boy, that'd be a great time to get the subscription the last month of the regular season and then into the playoffs, because this last month's going to be pretty exciting for when it comes to the SJHL and the race for the playoffs, and then the playoffs itself. So be sure, if you can't make it out to your local rink, you can watch the games on Hockey TV. But 12 games on the schedule this weekend. For Clark Monroe, my name's Jeromy Corrigan, and this has been another episode of SJHL Insider. Enjoy the games this weekend, everyone.